So question one is, I was previously denied for a raise or promotion due to budget issues. How do I know when to ask again? So here's the first thing I'll say. And if I was coaching the person who asked this question live, I would be like, you do know when to ask again. You don't like the answer. And so you're telling yourself you don't know. Like a lot of times when our brain is telling us, I don't know when to do this, like we do know, we just don't like the answer, because the answer might be ask again now. And then you're going to feel really uncomfortable and you don't want to go do that. And so instead your brain's like, I don't know when the right time is, right? So this is one thing that can be going on here. Maybe it's not. Maybe this is like there's a legitimate further. And so we're going to break down though, like what's happening, like why we don't want to ask. So knowing when to ask again, I want to do kind of, outside of the set of mindset work, like when we're having a promotion or raise discussion with our boss, we want to make sure that we know when to ask again, right? That we found out in that meeting. So if you're thinking about having one of these meetings, right? Like the things you want to walk away with are, what specific things do I need to do to get this promotion or raise, right? If you're told no at the time, how will we measure and know that I've done them, right? Like very clear things you can point to say yes, right? Like if it's all squishy, then you're going to come back and they're going to be like, oh no, that's not quite what I meant, right? So like, don't be afraid to ask for real, true specifics that you can both point to and go, yes, I finished that project, or I learned this skill, or whatever. And then once I've done them, what can I expect? Right? So you might think, oh, this will get me to the next thing. And they're like, no, this will just get you a small pay bump at your current level, right? So make sure that you understand, like, if I do these things, these very specific things that we both can agree that are done, and then what will I get when I do them, right? And then when should we circle back and have this discussion again? What's our next touch point? So make sure that when you're having these conversations, you're getting those pieces out. So let's assume we forgot to do that part, right? Like where we're like kind of freaked out in the meeting, or like, okay, we got told no, right? And you sort of got a thing. And so now you're like, when do I really ask? So a couple of things are going on in our nervous system when this happens. So one is a freeze response, and it's self-doubt that's triggered by fear of disappointment, right? We're not sure when we want to do it because we actually don't want to. We're actually worried and have anxiety around feeling disappointed or feeling regret if we don't get the answer that we want. We also might be going into a flight response where we're jumping into perfectionism and we're trying to avoid doing it wrong. So we think if we do all of these things, then there's no way that I can go into this meeting and be disappointed by the answer, right? Because we're still operating off of that fear. Or we can go into a fight response where we're shoulding, coulding, and woulding all over ourselves, or we're worried that we're going to should, could, and would all over ourselves, right? The woulda triplets, shoulda, coulda, and woulda. We're worried that they're going to come in if we do ask and be like, you shouldn't have even asked. If only you would have like thought about this more, you could have done more to set yourself up, right? And we're so worried about all of the shame and humiliation that we're going to create with our thoughts when we get in there. So this is triggered oftentimes by our socialization, particularly as women, but also in other marginalized identities that we live within. So if women are validated and praised for our caretaking activities, right, and we feel responsible for tending to other people's comforts, then of course we're going to feel some amount of like, there might be something coming up with like, oh, well, I don't want my boss to be mad at me, right? As if we can actually control other people's feelings. But we're taught as women that we're not only that we can somehow impact other people and how they feel about a situation, but that it is actually our responsibility. So that can be part of what's at play here. And then, if we're doubting ourselves, like that's by design, right? We're not trained to look inward for the answer. Am I worthy? Am I valuable? Am I doing enough? Right? We're looking to other people to validate that. So the idea that we're going to make ourselves vulnerable and go and ask for this particular type of validation in the form of a raise or a promotion, and we're not going to get it, then we're going to feel crushed, right? And the woulda triplets come in. And so the feelings that are going to come up, right? The emotions that you're going to have when you're thinking about this are self-doubt and indecision, right? When you feel like you need to know all the steps, I need to know when I should do this, how I should do this, right? Perfectionism is going to come in. I want to do it right. And then the anxiety, that's sort of the counterpart of that, that I'm going to do it wrong. I'm going to ask at the wrong time. I'm going to make them mad, right? The anxiety of overstepping or of being too confident, thinking too highly of ourselves, right? Have I even earned this, right? And so, but the most prevalent thing when we're talking about this particular situation is the fear of how it's going to feel if we don't do it right. Right. But the thing is, and this is the thing that will set you free, is understanding that you can have your own back no matter what happens. You can go ask for the raise. You can get told no. It can seem like your boss is mad at you about it, right? They could even tell you this was the wrong time to ask. I can't even believe you're here, right? All of that is the situation. But what makes it awful is inviting in the Uda triplets, all of the humiliation and shame and everything else. So if we can agree up front, I'm going to go in, I'm going to ask for this. And then if I don't get it, I'm going to get the information that I need so that I can get it in the future without making it mean that we did anything wrong, we didn't do it perfectly right, that we didn't earn it. Like all of these things that we're going to tell ourselves down the line, we can just agree now to have our own back no matter what. No matter what, I'm not going to should, could, and would all over myself. I'm just going to get some information and then I'm going to move forward, right? But I'm not going to make it mean I have to leave this company. This boss doesn't support me. I'm not going to make it mean any of those things that are going to make a situation that's not great, right? If you don't get the outcome that you want. I'm not going to make that mean anything about me, my ability, or my future, or my contributions that I've made to date. I'm not going to add any additional meaning to it, right? And then it makes it a little bit easier to go in and have this conversation. So, of course, we feel like if we're worried about, oh, I get it. Amy just sent a Slack and I was like, why are you sending that to me right now? But I know what she's doing. Sorry, Amy. All right. So, of course, we are worried that we're doing it wrong, right? Self-doubt is by design. Us going and trying to get our validation cookies everywhere else, that is by design. Of course, we're worried that we're going to misstep and we feel responsible for other people's feelings if we don't get our validation cookies when we do it wrong, right? But we can have our own backs. We cannot make it worse. We cannot should, could, and would all over ourselves. And of course, we beat ourselves up when we don't do it perfectly. Of course we do, because if we don't do it perfectly, then we don't get that validation that we so need to tell us that we're doing it right and that we're on the right track, right? So what happens when all of this, like these completely predictable outcomes happen? So we'll continuously search for the right answer instead of moving forward. And we stay stuck at the starting line. What happens when we think we need to know everything that's going to possibly happen in this meeting, then we have to know every step before we can take one step. And going and asking for a raise or promotion imperfectly is so much better than not asking at all, right? Even if we just get a little bit of information, even if we're like, hey, I wasn't really expecting the conversation to go this way. Can we bring that, I need to do a little bit more. And can we talk about this again in 2 weeks, right? Whatever's going to happen, like having that conversation messy and imperfect is so much better than not having the conversation at all. So, and then looking for the right time, right? Our brain thinks that this is danger, that if we feel any amount of psychological discomfort, that we're actually in physical mortal peril. It floods our bodies with the same adrenaline and cortisol as if we were about to be chased by a lion, right? But it's just, we're uncomfortable. So your brain is going to go find evidence that this isn't the right time. Like, oh, well, there was a hiring freeze. We lost that head count. There were layoffs somewhere else or even in our department, right? Like all of these things. We'll look for these reasons because our brain is like, it will be dangerous if you go ask because you're going to feel uncomfortable doing it. but you are not in mortal peril. The only thing you're risking is not getting a raise or a promotion because you're not putting your hat in the ring. You're not raising your hand. You're not getting the information that you need so that you can start building the skills or demonstrating whatever it is that you need to do to actually get it in the future. Because if you don't ask, you're not going to get that information. And then when you ask again in 6 months or whenever, when you think it's the right time, like you're going to have lost all of that because you're going to go in 6 months and they might be like, hey, I just really need you to do this thing. And then it's another 6 months down the line. So just think about doing it very imperfectly and give yourself permission to do this. And then the final thing is that your manager's job includes career development and retention. Like that's part of their job. And so you are not being inconvenient when you're asking them to do part of their job. You know, I think sometimes we can get lost and just think managers are here to like set strategy and assign workloads and get a project off the finish line, but they're not. They're there for actually managing human beings and their careers. So don't forget that part when your brain's giving you all of these danger signals of why you shouldn't go ask. So here are my tips. So one, I want you to remember that if you don't prioritize your career, like no one else is going to do it for you. Like we get really caught up in this idea that if I put my head down and I work really hard, someone will notice and I will be rewarded. And it's just not how it works. Like hardly ever, right? You have to be in the driver's seat of your own career and not expecting that someone else is going to get you where you want to go. If you're in like the passenger seat or the back seat or whatever, you've got to be in the driver's seat. And that doesn't mean you have to know where you're going. You just have to know the next step and be heading towards it. We want to cancel the UDA triplets, right? The shouldas, the couldas, and the wouldas. We want to make it safe to do something like this. The thing that we are most afraid of, we're slightly afraid of the discomfort of the meeting, but we're terrified of how crappy we're going to be to ourselves if it doesn't go the way that we want. And so we really just want to agree in advance not to judge ourselves, not to should, could, and would all over ourselves, no matter what the outcome is. And that there's a concept, I don't talk about it very often on here, but that life is 50-50, that it's 50% positive and 50% negative emotions. And if you can lean into that and just be like, oh, this is the part where I feel uncomfortable. This is the part where I feel vulnerable. This is the part where I feel a little bit anxious. This is the part, right? And it's just part of the 50-50. And we just say, oh, sometimes I'm not going to feel the positive emotions. In fact, 50% of the time I'm not. And this is just part of life's experience. Like that can really sort of open up a world for you, because a lot of times we're like trying to feel happy or good all the time. And it's just simply not how life works. And so just sort of understanding life as 50-50 at the baseline is also super helpful in this situation. This is the part where I have to be a little bit uncomfortable to get the thing that I want. You know, the discomfort is the currency of your dreams, right? And then the last thing, and Amy, I didn't warn you about this. I'm sorry. She'll drop it in the chat in a second, but I have a workbook called How to Navigate High Stakes Interactions Like a Boss. And this, if you're thinking about doing one of these, and if you're watching this on the replay and you're not, oh, wow, that was fast. Amy's on it. She's like, I saw it coming. So if you want to download that, and if you're watching, you know, on a live stream of the replay, just go to unboundandunbothered.com and it's under free guides or something in the top nav up there. So, but this will take you like, Amy's laughing. This will take you step by step of how to like plan this meeting so that you have a plan going in. And I promise you, if you have a plan going in of an outcome that you can control, like you're going to walk out feeling like, yes, I owned that. I did exactly what I wanted to do. Even if I didn't get the outcome that I was hoping for, it will still be a success. And that's the thing that I want most for you.